La Gran Renuncia es auspiciado por Workation Planet, la agencia de retiros empresariales en los mejores entornos rurales de la Argentina. Si eres gerente de una empresa remota o híbrida, te ayudamos a fortalecer la conexión entre tus colaboradores compartiendo experiencias grupales únicas en un entorno de plena naturaleza. Y si eres nómada digital, te invitamos a sumarte a nuestra comunidad para descubrir los mejores destinos de Argentina mientras trabajas. Ingresa a www.workationplanet.co y entérate de todo lo que tenemos para ofrecerte. Workation Planet te invita a disfrutar el siguiente episodio de La Gran Renuncia.
Bienvenidos a un nuevo capítulo de La Gran Renuncia. Nuestra invitada de hoy es Michelle Coulson. Es reclutadora de recursos humanos desde varios años y hace 2 años creó la empresa Remote Rebellion, que ayuda a las personas a conseguir un trabajo que los haga más feliz en un esquema remoto. Aparte de la asesoría, su empresa ofrece también una academia donde se dictan cursos sobre cómo tener éxito en la búsqueda de un trabajo remoto y, como ella misma lo describe en su página, quiere contribuir a un mundo con gente más feliz, que tenga menos estrés y pocos arrepentimientos.
Bienvenidos a La Gran Renuncia, claves para una gerencia remota.
Michelle, welcome and thank you for accepting our invitation.
Hola, thank you for having me here.
Michelle, ¿en qué parte del mundo te encuentras ahora?
I'm in Gran Canaria at the moment, in haga, este, in the north part. It's beautiful here.
Excelente. El nombre de tu empresa, Rebelión Remota, asocio la parte de rebelión un poco con el nombre de nuestro podcast, La Gran Renuncia. ¿Por qué tú decidiste llamarlo así?
Because I set up the business in 2021 when the whole return to work mandate was really starting to begin. So everyone working remotely in 2020, and then we're like, okay, everyone come back to the office now. And I was working for a company as a recruiter, and I quit my job because they wouldn't let me stay working remotely. And I was like, okay, screw you, I'm going to quit that. And then I thought I would have an easy ride trying to find a new job remotely, but I realized how difficult it was. And that's what I feel like the main reason for companies not wanting people to work remotely is fear and ego. So I really feel like we're rebelling against the man, against corporate, for forcing us back into these environments that life has changed. You know, the pandemic changed everybody's life. And this enforcement really feel like it's something that we need to rebel against.
Sí, interesante que mencionas el ego y el miedo. ¿Puedes un poquito elaborar sobre eso?
Well, I think they're the only two reasons. You can, most companies will say it's company culture. They'll say it's tax, legal, work rights. They'll make these excuses, which I think most of them are. Obviously, for roles that can be done remotely. I'm not talking about things where you need to be physically present. But I believe these companies didn't like not having control over seeing their employees. Some of these fat cats who like to have an office full of employees so they can seem successful, or you middle managers have someone to boss around or to physically see them in the office that they paid for. That's ego. And the fear is, a lot of companies like, what if we don't know if people are working, and what if they actually have time without commuting to work on their own side projects, and then they realize that they don't want to work here anymore because they have more important things to do. What if they wake up and they actually realize that there's things more important than work?
Bien, Michelle, ¿y cuál sería la mejor manera para reclutar trabajadores remotos?
It's a really general question. That really depends. It depends on your company.
For example, if you would be a remote manager, no? How the best way to this?
Still general. Like, it really depends. What role are you recruiting for? What company do you work for? What do you want in that person? What location requirement? There's too many questions to ask before I could give a general answer.
Yes, but skills for general remote work, for example.
Okay, that's an easier answer. I would say communication sounds so general, but communication and a certain level of tech competency. And that's not to say that you need to be technical. It just means that you need to be able to use the tools that you're likely to be using remotely. So that's Zoom. That's things like Loom, Teller, Notion, Slack, just some of the tools. You need to have a certain level of knowledge about how these remote working tools are going to be used, and learn that before you actually get the remote job if you've never worked remotely before. Then the first one I mentioned on communications, that's not just speaking clearly, that's actually learning how to communicate asynchronously. And for those who don't know what that means, that's essentially, and I'm still getting better at this, I'm still not great, writing something that doesn't assume that other person knows what you mean. I have a really bad habit of just writing something, expecting someone to be a mind reader. But what happens then is someone needs to follow up and say, what did you mean about this? And if someone is in the US and someone's in Australia, you're waiting up to 12 hours maybe of when you're going to get a response. So learning how to communicate that isn't just good so that people as a non-native speaker to your language understand, but also that there isn't as many follow-ups, and that you can write something and clearly explain something without needing a follow-up question. And that really helps with asynchronous working.
Sí, lo que comentas de la comunicación asincrónica es realmente un reto tanto para el trabajador, el empleado, como para el gerente. ¿Cómo tú consideras debe ser la manera de manejar este tipo de comunicación asincrónica en los grupos, en las empresas?
I think it's a bit of relearning what we already know. Like when I worked in recruitment, I worked at an app development agency. And when we started working remotely, a lot of the developers said, Shell, we get so much more work done when you're not there in the office. I was like, what do you mean? They're like, well, they're in their zone coding and I'm tapping them on the shoulder. Like, I need to ask this question. We get so used to just tapping someone on the shoulder, interrupting their workflow because we need an answer. And I'm the worst for that. I'm like, I need an answer now. I'm impatient. I need an answer. But that's not a good way of working, and it's not sustainable. So learning to redevelop, like, okay, let me put my questions clearly in one document, and then when they have time, they respond to that. So being respectful of other people's time, putting everything down on paper, and having a one source of truth, such as Notion or such as Teller, whatever tool you find best, where everything's on there rather than just something you said to someone that wasn't recorded somewhere and it isn't on some email chain. So the tools is one really big part of that, but actually using the tools and learning what works best and how you can use it to advantage as well.
Sí, también es un tema de la confianza que tiene que debe manejar el gerente ante los empleados que trabajan remoto, porque bueno, le escribe y no responde en el momento, entonces tiene desconfianza de qué está haciendo, y es un reto realmente para los gerentes, los directores. ¿Cómo crees se debe manejar este tema de la confianza en un ambiente remoto?
Yeah, I think the key term is trust. And I think that comes from within them, of being able to trust their employees, but hiring someone that they're able to trust. If you're going to hire someone, the same way you get into a relationship with someone, you shouldn't go into a relationship if immediately you don't trust them or you're not willing to trust them, unless they give you a reason not to trust them. You're setting things in a bad state if you're just constantly going to be on this, like, what if they do this, what if they do that, are they cheating on me because I've not heard back from them? It's very similar in the work relationship and a personal relationship. Like, unless that person is giving you a reason not to trust them, you've hired them, let them do their job, give them the freedom to do it, and they will be, most times you get bad employees, of course you do, most times they will appreciate that trust and they will want to work harder for you. Like, I'll give you an example. I've got one freelancer, and she's based in Argentina at the moment, and she's fantastic. Like, she's absolutely great. She generally works Monday to Friday. She chooses her own hours. She works when she wants, and she works wherever she wants. I'm never checking in on her. I'll just say, if you're not going to be responding within 48 hours, give me a heads up. If anything's urgent, I'll WhatsApp you if you're okay with that. So we're setting the boundaries as well, of, like, for me, I do not appreciate WhatsApp on a personal level unless it's urgent and it's something I need to be aware of. And just setting those boundaries of what isn't urgent and what are the priorities, and having that agreement together as well. And Lucia, her name is, she's shout out to Lucia. she's great, and she works harder than I think anyone else would, because she really values the time that she gets to spend with her family and her kids, because of the freedom she gets. Like, her family come first and she works around that, and that's the way it should be.
¿Y qué piensas acerca del trabajo híbrido?
Don't get me started on that. That depends. It depends if you define hybrid. I define hybrid as enforced office time. So they tell you, we have an office and you must come here X times a week, X times a month. That's hybrid. And I think it's BS. I think it's a fake vision of flexibility. Now, when it comes to actually, we have an office and you have the flexibility to go there whenever you want to, but it's there if you do. Some people like the office. I'm not anti-office. I'm anti being forced to go somewhere that doesn't work well for you and your team. And yes, there's some issues with that as well. If some people are fully remote and some people are a mixture, there are issues. I haven't dealt with that environment, but I honestly think the enforced hybrid is BS as well.
Sí, quizás el problema no es la oficina, sino el micromanagement en realidad.
Yes. And if there's a reason for that enforced office time, I get that because I value in-person communication. Like I'm at an in-person digital nomad conference full of people who love getting together in person. We're living this life, but yet we still want to meet in person. It's not that we're anti this, but is there a good reason for that time? Like, why do you really need people in the office once a week? Is it really company culture? Is it so you can see what they're doing? What's the reason behind it? What value are you getting from that meeting in person?
Como reclutadora vos recibís un montón de currículum vitae. ¿Cuáles son los puntos del currículum vitae que vos ves, que vos evaluás para poder considerar a un trabajador remoto?
I would say people don't often, and this goes for non-remote CVs as well, but people don't often tell their value. Instead, they give like a laundry list of what they have done. So I have done X, Y, Z. This is what I'm doing at my current company. They describe what they're doing instead of the value that they add. And this is a really important thing, especially when working remotely, because you need to be able to describe the reason behind something. Because when you're going to be communicating asynchronously as well, you're going to need to have to do this more of an explanation rather than I did this. And I use drinking water as an example. Like, okay, I drank water today. So what? Well, I drank water so I could stay hydrated. So what? So if you keep asking yourself the so what does it lead to? Oh, that led to me being way more productive and I got to go and cure world hunger or whatever that outcome is that's so amazing and the reason that someone would hire you. And the second one is people leaving up to assumptions because they know their profile so well, they just assume someone else will think that as well. One of the assumptions specific to remote work is putting down your location. If you want to be flexible on where you want to work, put it in there. And instead of actually your location, your work rights and the time zones that you are open to work in is more important. So then someone doesn't have to make the assumption because your name doesn't sound Spanish that you don't have the right to work in Spain, for example. So spell it out for them. EU citizen, open to work in EMEA time zones or EMEA time zones, whatever that is. And that's the information they need to know. Just give them the information they need to know rather than fluff that you think is important.
Sí, aclarar la time zone o la zona horaria donde uno reside en el currículum para un trabajo remoto es muy importante porque hay que combinar un horario entre diferentes países, entre diferentes zonas. Entonces es importante aclarar eso.
Especially if you're for example, you're a Spanish citizen and you actually you want to work US time zones. Maybe you're you're a night owl and you would rather work in those times. Or opposite, I like to work from 6 a.m. I don't want to work a 9 to 5. So maybe I'll look for roles in Asia time zone or something. So just because your location is there, someone might make the assumption that you want to work those time zones, but don't let them make that assumption. Spell it out for them.
Si te gusta nuestro contenido, te pedimos que nos ayudes a difundirlo siguiéndonos en Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube o desde la plataforma que nos estés escuchando. También podés suscribirte a nuestro newsletter podcastlagranrenuncia@gmail.com y te haremos llegar todas las novedades acerca de gerenciamiento y trabajo remoto. Seguimos escuchando La Gran Renuncia.
Michelle, para una persona que desea trabajar de manera remota y vive en un lugar donde el costo de vida es más bajo o se quiere mudar a un lugar donde el costo de vida es bajo, el costo de vida es más bajo que, por ejemplo, en Inglaterra. ¿Cuál recomiendas o consideras debe ser el diálogo con la empresa al momento de negociar el salario? Porque la empresa puede tender a ofrecer un menor salario si te encuentras en una zona de costo de vida bajo.
That depends. Are you talking about someone having the conversation with their current employer or when they're looking for
Yes.
new opportunities?
Yeah, current employer. Or yeah.
If they're trying to negotiate with their current employer and to say that they are looking to work remotely from X country, I would try and avoid as many details as possible. It's none of their business how you choose to live your life. You might choose to live in Madrid in a 5-bedroom house. I might choose to live in Madrid in a 1-bedroom place. Should you get paid more because you're in a 5-bedroom house? No, you made that choice to live there. So I never understand that. Okay, you've made a decision to move to somewhere that's lower cost, because that's the decision you made in your lifestyle. So I think the way to approach that is avoid as many details as you need. They don't need to know how you're living your life. And the way that you could talk about that is where your base is. Like, for example, I moved from the UK to Bali. The cost of living in Bali is, sorry for the noises, is way lower than the UK. But I still had my mortgage in the UK. I still had like things that I had to pay. So my base was there. And that for that reason, because of, having those commitments, that's the kind of salary I was looking for. And that's what I've been used to being paid. So it's none of their business that my lifestyle has changed and that they should pay me lower. And the way to go about that is that way, just to avoid as many details as possible. Yes, I might be going to Bali now, but then I might go to Singapore where the cost of living is much higher. So are you going to pay me more when I go to Singapore?
Sí, excelente punto. Ahora, tú en tu empresa te focalizas más en la calidad de la búsqueda y menos en la cantidad. ¿Qué puntos consideras prioritarios para hacer ese enfoque hacia la calidad en las empresas que quieres ser contratado?
It goes back a few steps into actually figuring out what you want first. So rather than just going, I want a remote job and having a real generalization, really getting to understand what is important to you. What are your non-negotiables? How flexible do you need it to be? What level of remote do you want? What industry? So getting that clear of like what the ideal looks like and what you're happy with as well. And to manage your expectations on that as well. And to target those kind of roles and companies. It's the same in marketing or again in dating. If you're going to go out there onto dates and be like, hey, anyone want me? I'll take anyone. It's not going to look so good. You're going to get that. You're going to attract the wrong kind of people. And it's the same with companies and jobs. Just going for anything. Nobody wants to be just anyone. You want to be, okay, I'm looking for this. This is what's important to me. And this is what I can offer. It's a two-way street. So it goes really back to figuring out what they want first, rather than just, please hire me.
Hay una gran tendencia de opinión, tanto en los grandes diarios, en los grandes medios de comunicación, en la web, sobre todo encabezada por Elon Musk, de que el trabajo remoto es el pasado y de que hoy por hoy tenemos que volver sí o sí a las oficinas, de que es mucho mejor. ¿Cuál es tu opinión al respecto?
There's so many different things at play there. Again, the fear and ego thing playing. A lot of these people look the same, don't you think? They're Western old white guys generally. They kind of look very similar. They've got a certain viewpoint of the world, and a lot of them have reasons that being in office is beneficial for them, whether they've got stakes in real estate. With Elon Musk, it's the car industry, people actually going to the office in those Teslas or whatever he's looking at. And then you've got the people that are just really dinosaurs in that they don't like change and they don't know how to adjust to it. Again, the way I liken it to is when women were entering the workforce, World War II was happening, more women were doing the roles of men while they were out to war. Then World War II ended, and it's like, okay, back in the homes, women. And the women were like, no, like we've seen a different life now. It's like, yeah, but we'll just go back to the way it was. It's like, no, the genie is out of the bottle now. It doesn't work that way. Just because it's not working, because you're not getting your dinner on the table, or we're having to find different ways to do things, doesn't mean that remote work is dead. It's that you haven't found a way to make it work for you. And that's the things that need to be explored. And women in the workforce took decades to actually get to the point we're at now. And I do think remote work's going to take that amount of time to get to a stable place as well.
Y navegando en la página de Remote Rebellion, me encontré con que también organizás una academia de trabajo remoto. Es muy buena la idea y te quería preguntar, ¿qué se enseña en esa academia de trabajo remoto?
Yeah, it was a long time in the making. I was a recruiter for 7 years before I created the academy, and I was doing about a year after that of one-to-one coaching, helping people to get a remote job. So within that, we teach everything from figuring out what it is that you want, what's important to you, what level of remote you want, how to search and find genuine remote jobs that are not these pesky hybrid or fake scam companies, all of the ways to find them that are not just on LinkedIn, then actually how to apply. So how to show your value on paper. A lot of people are really good in interviews, but actually showing their value across on paper on a CV when you're just a name to someone is really difficult, because the competition for remote jobs is so high that it's just really hard to simply just get to the next stage and get a interview. So that covers anything from CVs, cover letters, optimizing their LinkedIn profile so that recruiters reach out to them. I also share their CV with my network of recruiters. We send them individual jobs to the rebels, I call them, which are the people in the program. We send them jobs every week that they can apply to. And we have that support group. So we have the weekly calls where they can ask me questions. They can ask the rest of the group, how have you found this? What do you think about that? And get in time support while they're going through the process, because a lot of people just feel really lost. They've lost their confidence, they feel demotivated, and they need that support network to show them where they're going wrong if they're going down a wrong direction, so they're not just veering off the wrong path all the time. And then they're celebrating their wins. They might have a week where they've had a really rubbish week and they want to have a bit of a moan, and that's fine. And another week where they're like, I got 2 interviews or I got a job offer, and it helps to encourage others as well. So it's a mixture of support, coaching, guidance, PR, counseling. I'm not a qualified counselor, but there's everything in between, like supporting them through that journey.
Ay, Michelle, ¿puedes compartir algunos tips para trabajar la carta de presentación o el currículum de un trabajador remoto que quiera aplicar a este tipo de esquema laboral?
Yeah, I've actually got a free CV guide, which I can share with you afterwards, because it's not really a quick answer to give you, unfortunately. But the main thing I would say is use metrics, use numbers to show your value of what you did, rather than just saying what you did. Get someone else to read your CV and check that there's not assumptions that you've made. Is it obvious what you do and how you add value? That's one of the main things to see. So show to the employer when you're applying, both in your cover letter and your CV, how are they going to benefit from hiring you?
Sí, estaba leyendo que hay una nueva legislación ahora aprobada en Inglaterra sobre el trabajo remoto y interesante. Y uno de los puntos de esta legislación es que el empleador, el director, el gerente de la empresa tiene que validar las razones por la cual puede decirle no a un trabajador que quiere flexibilidad en su horario. Eso bien avanzado, ese punto, ¿no?
Yeah, it's great. And I was quite surprised to see the UK paving the way to a certain degree on that, but there are actually way more flexible working policies that have been introduced in other countries, and there's a few in Europe. I think Spain did one at one point. I'm pretty sure Poland had another, Portugal. So there's a few that are out there, which is great, and I think we're going to see more of these soon.
Bueno, Michelle, muchísimas gracias por haber participado de este episodio de La Gran Renuncia. Muy, pero muy interesante haber hablado con vos. Y compartinos cómo podría la gente ver tu material o comunicarse con vos.
Thank
Awesome.
you. Thank you for
Thank
the
you
time.
so much. And if people want to know more, they can go to remoterebellion.com, and there's a masterclass I'm hosting for free on the 10th of August, so they can find out a bit more about how the program works. It was really nice. Thank you so much, and thanks for doing this in English as well.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Thank you a lot.
Thank you.
Muy bien, escuchábamos a Michelle Coulson en este episodio de La Gran Renuncia. Michelle capacita, entrena y asiste a personas que quieran tener su próximo trabajo remoto, los ayuda a conseguir su próximo trabajo remoto a través de su página remoterebellion.com. Con ella, bueno, hablábamos de un abanico de temas, ¿no? Desde el trabajo asincrónico y sincrónico, el trabajo híbrido. Nos detallaba los puntos importantes al momento de presentar un currículum vitae o una carta de presentación cuyo objetivo sea conseguir un trabajo remoto. Bueno, que hay que tener algunas cuestiones en consideración más que en aquel currículum vitae clásico para el trabajo presencial. Además, en remoterebellion.com podés ingresar a su escuela de trabajo remoto, a su academia de trabajo remoto, donde te va a compartir los tips y los consejos para poder entrenarte para conseguir este tipo de trabajo. Y te recomendamos, el día 10 de agosto, Michelle va a impartir un pequeño seminario sobre los 6 pasos principales para conseguir un trabajo 100% remoto. Es el 10 de agosto, es en inglés y se va a transmitir en vivo a través de YouTube y LinkedIn. Para el horario, para combinar el horario bien con tu zona horaria, con tu time zone, bueno, ingresa a LinkedIn, a YouTube, al LinkedIn de Michelle Coulson, que tiene su nombre, ¿no? Michelle Coulson, y ahí vas a tener los datos para poder combinar tu zona horaria para poder ver este seminario de trabajo remoto. Ahora sí, esto ha sido La Gran Renuncia. Muchísimas gracias por haber estado con nosotros. Para comunicarse con nosotros lo tienen que hacer a nuestro mail podcastlagranrenuncia@gmail.com, y para escucharnos te invitamos a ingresar en todas las plataformas de podcast donde estamos, seguirnos en Spotify y también suscribirse en nuestro canal de YouTube. Muchísimas gracias y hasta el episodio que viene.
Escuchaste La Gran Renuncia, un podcast producido por Roberto Schlesinger y Cristian Curto. Si te gustó, hace clic en el botón seguir y nos vemos en el próximo episodio.